Good morning. We would like to thank all of you for joining us on our webinar. This is Javier Rodriguez. I'll be your host today on behalf of Risco Insurance, now powered by Endzone. We are very delighted to have a wonderful speaker, Carlos Lopez, who's going to talk about a plan that is concerning me because we have not heard much about it in the news, but we have a hard deadline that Carlos will talk about looming within a few days. It's a retirement plan for small businesses, which is a law enacted by the state of California. And Carlos will give us a bigger rundown on that. But I think this is one of the biggest news features of this year. Meili, thank you for also being there and just helping us out here and being our administrator and producer and the Endzone team for their work. So can we go to the next slide? So for those that either are new or don't know much about our webinar, we've had webinars for the since the pandemic. So we have a library of webinars and we have upcoming webinars. So there's a QR code if you want to snap a picture of that, and that you could pre-register for our upcoming seminars. Let's go to the next slide. And just to give you an idea, what our goal here is really to empower you as business professionals, entrepreneurs, with all the different regulations and provisions and requirements to run a successful business. Our last seminar was an amazing seminar. If you did not have an opportunity to join in on cybersecurity, we actually had a cyber trainer from India really showing us how cyber attacks works. Recently, some of our clients have been affected by this new threat. It's very real. 46% of all attacks are small businesses. So a lot of people think that it's just the large corporations that these cyber criminals are going after, but they're really exploiting the smaller businesses and the vulnerabilities. So this is a great webinar. We had a two-part webinar on improving employee retention in the workplace. Amazing work that was done. It's a two-part, and all of that is on our YouTube channel. So the QR code will take you there. The coronavirus in the workplace, a lot of changes with Omicron and what's happening now, and vaccines. So a lot of areas in that were touched, and about the Coronavirus Act, AB 685, certain reporting requirements, and many more. So I welcome you and encourage you. It's free access to those businesses or individuals that are interested. So that's QR code. I want to talk a little bit about some housekeeping for today. Let's go to the next slide. So the webinar is being recorded, so you'll have an opportunity, if you want to revisit some of the content, to go back to our YouTube calendar, a YouTube library, and review the PowerPoints that are going to be shared there. You're going to be muted during that time. We will have at the end a Q&A session. It will be via your chat, so you could just chat on your on the Zoom. So you have questions. So let's go to the next slide. And a little bit about most of those that have attended are clients of Risco or have been referred to us, or you've seen what we've done. Risco in the beginning of this year merged with Endzone Insurance Services. Very excited to give us a new platform to continue to grow and grow these seminars. Endzone was founded in 2002, and their headquarters in Sacramento. They're a full service agency brokerage, very similar. That's why the fit was excellent with us, and provide a broad array of property and casualty insurance along with employee benefits. with a strong experienced management team, and so is growing exponentially. Wonderful company. We're excited with this merger and look forward to some great things to come. Let's go to the next slide. This actually is not something we developed. This came from the LA Times, and this was kind of a headliner. No retirement plan at work, ? Your boss may have to sign up for CalSavers soon. Here's what to know. So here's what LA Times is putting. So I believe there's a lot of misunderstanding of what's happening there, and I'm very grateful to have Carlos Lopez, who's an expert in the area. Carlos has worked with many of our clients. I've known him for over 20 years. Excellent background and very effective. He's one of my personal advisors. So Carlos, let's go to the next slide. Let me hand over this baton over to you, Carlos. Thank you for joining us, and we're really excited to have you this morning.
Thank you, Javier. Appreciate the opportunity and the introduction, and this opportunity to just educate and inform and hopefully help some folks out with getting compliant with the state.
Great, Carlos. Well, let me hand over the baton. It's all yours.
Sounds good. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Again, just really pleased to be here, and I hope all are having a great start of their day. Just wanted to highlight some areas that I think are of key importance now that the deadline is looming, and I'll give you some details in a minute. But yes, I am the founder of Two Pillars Asset Management, an investment advisory firm. Go to the next slide, please. I'm going to get some of the legal stuff out of the way here. We can just forward that a little bit. A little disclosure for those that might be not looking at the screen. I got to read this. Advisory services are offered through Jacob and Boaz Asset Management, LLC. We're doing business as Two Pillars Asset Management, or Two Pillars, a registered investment advisor in the states of Texas and California. Two Pillars is not endorsed by any government agency and is not engaged in the practice of law or tax advice. Okay, next slide, please. Just want to cite our sources. We'll be sourcing from article on my website over at twopillarsam.org. There's a great resource center for articles like this and other key topics. You're welcome to visit. Otherwise, we'll be looking at some sourcing from the callaborfed.org, as well as the treasury.ca.gov, and the consulting firm also regarding the Secure Act. Next, please. A little bit about my background in case you didn't get a chance to read the invitation emails. I am the founder here. As I mentioned, opened my firm in 2019. I graduated at NYU in 1994 from the Stern School of Business, double majored in BS, a Bachelor of Science in Economics and Finance. I've got 20 years of investment experience, including as an established portfolio manager. Been the founding member of several investment committees. I'm trained to provide biblically wise financial advice as a certified Kingdom advisor. And here at Two Pillars, in addition to holistic wealth management and corporate retirement plan assistance, we also specialize in faith-driven impact investing. So I'm on LinkedIn if you'd like to find me there, and there's some contact info there where you're welcome to call us or send us an email. We'll get you some more of that information later. I'm going to go ahead now and stop my video. We can focus on the screens as we take a look at the agenda. 4 major parts I want to cover today in our time together. One, I want to give you the current status of the CalSavers law that Javier has alluded to. Also want to talk about types of small business retirement plans, and also those particular plans are known as qualified plans that make you compliant with the state. I'm going to talk about the benefits of pooled employer plans, which is an aspect of one of those types of plans, and also opportunity to consider how you might be able to enhance your current retirement plan. Next, please. So with that said, why don't we jump into our first topic here? Basically, it's time's up on the CalSavers law. Next, please. That deadline is actually tomorrow. Just a word, little context on how we got here. The state law passed in 2016, known as Senate Bill 1234. It authorized the implementation of the California Secure Choice Retirement Savings Plan, which is an automatic payroll deduction retirement savings program for private sector employees in California who lack access to a retirement or workplace retirement plan. CalSavers, as it's known today, is meant to be a backstop solution. In other words, a last resort. There is mandatory participation for employers with over 5 employees. The employers must now offer access to an eligible retirement savings vehicle. As I mentioned, the deadline is tomorrow. And at this point, the current status is penalties will be coming soon. Next, please. All right, so deadlines. Any employer with at least 5 employees, as I mentioned, that doesn't already offer a workplace retirement savings vehicle is now required to offer one via the private market or provide their employee access to the state-run program. This started being implemented back in 2021 with employers with over 100 employees. It was June 30th for them. The following year, anybody with 50 or more employees had until June 30th. That was extended a little bit for the pandemic, but ultimately June 30th was the original deadline. But at this point now, June 30th, 2022, for anyone with 5 or more employees, as I've mentioned, your deadline is tomorrow. At this point, there is no time to implement a program. At this point, you're now basically going to have to be dealing with the state looking to see what you're going to ultimately do. Hopefully you will be in compliance, but at this point, you're now playing catch up. So we've entered into the penalty phase if we can go forward. What is the penalty phase? Well, according to the Unemployment Code, Section 108.9B, each eligible employer that without good cause fails to allow its eligible employees to participate in the program on or before 90 days after service of notice or its failure to comply shall pay a penalty of $250 per eligible employee if non-compliance extends 90 days or more after the notice, and if found to be in non-compliance 180 days or more after the notice, an additional penalty of $500 per eligible employee. So for instance, if you have 10 employees and 180 days, you're still not in compliance, you'll be looking to pay $5,000. So the penalties are real and it's time to take action. We could forward to that. So let's go forward a little bit here. Some frequently asked questions. Who does it apply to? Well, to both non and for-profit employers. If you haven't already offered a qualified plan, I'm going to tell you exactly what a qualified plan means in just a second. You still have to notify the state of your exemption by tomorrow's deadline. So you might be offering a plan, but don't forget to call them and say, hey, I'm in a qualified plan, and you still need to let them know. They should have been sending you letters at this point. A couple is my understanding from some of my clients with information like a PIN and a password to get on their site. Calsavers.org is a good place to go for this and get into compliance. It's pretty easy, but don't forget, even though you might be offering a plan, you still got to let the state know that you're doing that or that you haven't. As far as the other questions that we typically get, yes, part-time employees are eligible. So anybody with a W-2 California base, 18 years of age with earned income and a social security number or an ITIN, they can participate. And lastly, it's voluntary for employees. So employees may opt out, but it doesn't mean that it's voluntary for employers per se. You still have to at least give them that access and give them an opportunity to opt out in the plan. So that is the current status on the plan, on the state plan, on the program. Now a word about the types of small business retirement plans. I want you to know your options. That's why we've gathered here today, what I hope to be providing for you. Let's go ahead and jump into the next, please. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, there are types of qualified retirement plans that the state will accept for compliance. They're listed there. There may be a few more that they also allow, for instance, as a 457 plan, which is a state-run program, or somebody from like maybe a city worker, a county worker, things like that. But otherwise, you're basically able to meet the be in compliance and meet the standard by offering a qualified pension plan, also a 401k plan, which includes MEPs and PEPs, and I'll explain what those mean in just a minute. 403As and 403Bs, and what are all these numbers? Guys, these are just the numbers to the IRS code. So these would be the sections where you would find the laws about 401ks, for instance, and 403As and Bs, and those are typically for your nonprofits, those two there. Otherwise, simplified employee pension plans, also known as SEPs, savings incentive match plan for employees known as simple IRA plans, and also payroll deduction IRAs with automatic enrollment. Basically, that's what the state-run program is, with the exception that it's a Roth offering only. So why the highlights? I want you to look at the 4 highlighted areas there, because these are really where we can hone in and start to think about what can be offered for a small business. That is the last phase we're entering now, those employees with 5 or employers with 5 or more employees. So, let's think about these highlighted areas, and this is what I want to drill down onto next. Okay. So what's a 401k? Well, let's use the definition the IRS provides on their website, cited down below. 401k is a feature of a qualified profit sharing plan that allows employees to contribute a portion of their wages to individual accounts. Elective salary deferrals are excluded from the employee's taxable income, except for the designated Roth deferrals. What else? So employers can contribute to employees' accounts. Distributions, including earnings, are includable in taxable income at retirement, except for qualified distributions of designated Roth accounts. So that's basically a 401k simplified in terms of its definition. Let's move on. We'll get back to that one later. But what's a SEP? And this is probably a little bit meatier. We mentioned that the simplified employee pension, it allows employers to contribute to traditional IRAs or SEP IRAs, which are set up for employees. A business of any size, even self-employed, can establish a SEP. So a SEP can provide a significant source of income at retirement by allowing employers to set aside money in retirement accounts for themselves and their employees. A SEP does not have the startup and operating costs of a conventional retirement plan, and it allows for a contribution of up to 25% of an employee's pay. It's available to any size business. It's easily established by adopting IRS Form 5305 SEP, a SEP prototype, or an individual design plan document. If the 5305 SEP is used, you cannot have any other retirement plan in existence except for another SEP. No filing requirement is necessary for the employer, and that's key, and that's helpful, especially with those administrative costs, which differs from 401k, where there is quite a bit more administrative handling that would be required by the employer, also known as the plan sponsor. Only the employer contributes. So that's key with a SEP. It's not like a traditional IRA, a traditional 401k where the plan, the employees can contribute to the plan. That's probably one of the key takeaways. And a SEP, only the employer contributes. He sets up SEP IRAs for each of the eligible employees, and he puts them, the contributions in the years that he chooses to. Employees is always invested, 100% invested, meaning you have ownership. Once it's put into your account, there's no time to wait. It belongs to you immediately. So all of your SEP IRA money in those years that an employer can contribute is how that would operate. All right, let's take a look at the other small business option here, the simple IRA. That it stands for Savings Incentive Match Plan for Employees, which basically allows employees and employers to contribute to traditional IRAs that are set up for employees at a financial institution. It's ideally suited for a startup retirement savings plan for small employers that are not currently sponsoring a retirement plan. Right? Simple IRA plans can provide a significant source of income at retirement by allowing employers and employees to set aside money in retirement accounts. Simple IRA plans do not have the startup and operating costs of a conventional retirement plan. They're available to any size business, generally with 100 or fewer employees. easily established by adopting Form 5304 Simple, that comes in two parts, or 5305 Simple, or the Simple IRA prototype, or an individually designed plan account. Employer cannot have any other retirement plan, and there's no filing requirement for the employer. Let's move on to the next slide. That's for definition, but how does it work in terms of contributions? Well, the employer is required to contribute each year. So if you set up a Simple, you're going to have contribution requirements. Unlike the SEP, in the years that you can, the Simple is going to require either a 3% matching contribution of up to 3% of compensation, but it's not limited by the annual compensation limit, or 2% non-elective contribution for each eligible employee. Meaning, if you're an employee, if the owner says, hey, I want to just give everyone 2% regardless if they're going to contribute themselves, then he has a formula. Okay, even if the eligible employee doesn't contribute to his or her Simple IRA, that employee must still receive an employer contribution to his or her Simple IRA equal to 2% of his or her compensation up to the annual limits of $305,000 for 2022. And it's subject to the cost of living adjustment for over the years. Now, the employer might say, you know, I'm only going to match those folks that actually are contributing themselves. And when that happens, then they can match up to 3% of compensation. And it's not limited by the annual compensation limit, right? So it's kind of a choice there. But the key takeaway there is that for a Simple IRA, you're going to be making a contribution one way or the other. You need to keep a Simple IRA in existence for at least 2 years before you were to move on to do something else, perhaps, right? So just know that that's a commitment going in. And different from the SEP, employees may elect to contribute. In the SEP, remember, only the employer is contributing. And like the SEP, though, the employee is always 100% invested, meaning he has all the ownership of his Simple IRA money. Okay, let's take a look at the next type of small business option here. And again, this is basically what the state is offering, with the exception, again, that it's only limited to Roth IRAs. But under a payroll deduction IRA, employees establish a traditional Roth or traditional IRA with a financial institution and then authorize a payroll deduction for it. A business of any size, even self-employed, can establish a payroll deduction IRA program. And it's probably the simplest retirement arrangement that a business can have. There's no plan document that needs to be adopted under this agreement. The employer has no filing requirements, and only the employees can make the contribution. So any size business can provide this. So just a little drill down here, unlike the SEPs and the Simples, where the employer is making some contribution one way or the other, in the payroll deduction IRAs, this is only the employee. So that's a key difference, and that's kind of a benefit, if you will, for those employers who maybe just can't make a contribution but do want to be in compliance with the state. So basically, that employee is going to establish an IRA, either a traditional or a Roth IRA with a financial institution, and then the employee or authorizes a payroll deduction for that IRA. The responsibility by the employer at this point is to simply transmit the employee's authorized deduction to the financial institution. And in general, if this arrangement is offered to any employee, then it should be offered to all employees, right? So you can help, you can get help with that. You can delegate that to your payroll provider, and they might be able to do that for you. But that would be your only requirement in this situation, is just pass that on. It's basically the no fuss, no muss situation. And again, as I mentioned, it's what CalSavers actually is, but only for Roth IRA accounts, okay? The limits are subject to basically your traditional IRA limits of $6,000 to the year, so they're limited there. If you're over 50, you can do another $1,000 for $7,000. So that's probably the least amount that a employee can save through his employer is kind of small, but at least they're doing something. And that's basically the backstop solution that I alluded to earlier by the state. All right, so they're saying at least let them save at least a smaller amount, where the other two have much more higher contributions. For instance, in a simple, you can do as much as 14,000. And if you're over 50, you can do an additional 3,000. And if you were to use a SEP, for instance, you can put up to $61,000 or 25% of employee pay, whichever is less. With that situation, there's no catch up, obviously, with the employer being the only one contributing there. So in terms of limits, look at it from that scale. You definitely would want to be providing at least the minimum, but ideally a much larger savings opportunity for your employees. All right, let's go ahead to the next slide. Just wanted to take a step back before we introduce this next portion. It's a portion of the 401k that we've already talked about, that extension. If you remember, I brought up PEPs and MEPs, and we're going to just kind of get some background of how we got here. Well, the Secure Act, it was signed by President Trump on December 20th in 2019. It is the Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement Act, and it's now U.S. law. There were some major changes to the retirement landscape, one of them being limits on inherited stretch IRAs and IRA contributions and distributions. And lastly, multi-employer plan access broadened. We're going to discuss those first two bullet points. What I want to do is drill down into this last bullet point, the highlighted. Let's go ahead and move forward, please. What are MEPs and PEPs? Well, multi-employer plans is what a MEPs is, and a PEP is a pooled employer plan. It's defined by the IRS. A multi-employer plan is a plan maintained by 2 or 3 or more employers who are not related. So there's there was wide-ranging potential as a result of the Secure Act passage, and it's probably the biggest change of the act. So previously, only employers with the same field or sharing a common characteristic were able to participate. So for instance, only bakers could get together with other bakers to offer their employees a shared plan. Well, now the baker and the candlestick maker can get together and say, hey, let's get together on a shared plan. And we now have removed that limitation. So those smaller employees have an opportunity to buy into larger plans alongside other small businesses. This opens business to a much wider field of options and can reduce the cost of administrative duties that our employer would otherwise have to bear all alone. For part-time employees, that door is now wide open for them. If you've either worked 1,000 hours in the space of 1 full year, or for those who have worked at least 500 hours per year for 3 consecutive years. So, good situation now for the small employer who, maybe a simpler SEP or the auto deduct isn't necessarily, what I'd like to do. Maybe I'd like to get the full benefits of a 401k. So that's kind of the path of thinking, the line of thinking here, as now this Secure Act has broadened and brought this potential about. Let's go and go to the next. So let's drill down then, an examination of the benefits of a pooled employer plan, or a PEP. This I borrowed from July Services, a vendor of mine that I'm happy to work with, a great PEP solution. The next few slides is my source for them. And it's basically an alternate solution. PEPs are a simple, cost-effective alternative to state-run plans. Let's take next. So, introducing PEP, as I mentioned, the Secure Act created an entirely new type of MEP, the pooled employer plan. The PEP allows unrelated small businesses to band together, as I mentioned, under one retirement plan, hopefully creating economies of scale, which must be governed by a pooled plan provider, or a PPP. So next. What are some of the logistics or some of the benefits here? A single 5500 filing, that's a very important document that the Department of Labor will expect for those on a plan. So now you're being able to utilize some efficiencies there. And the investments can vary, for instance, unlike some of the other limited options of the others that we discussed. Your plan design can vary. You have options on some of the contribution limits and eligibility requirements and things of that nature. You'll be dealing with a single custodian, a single trust, a single audit if there was one that you're going to be getting assistance with. A separate testing goes along with that, as well as layered fiduciary coverage. What does that mean exactly? Well, there's many participants involved in running a 401k. Typically, you'll have a TPA or 316 fiduciary. You'll have an investment manager, that's your 338 investment management fiduciary. And then you have a 321 fiduciary, which is a limited fiduciary. That's like what I offer here through my firm. These are advisors to the plan owners, and to the employees with general information and enrollment education. So you're able to get all of that type of fiduciary coverage as you look to mitigate some of your own responsibilities of managing a 401k, because ultimately you always have the responsibility, but you can delegate and get assistance with your responsibilities through those fiduciaries that I mentioned. And then I think this is key. Lastly, advisors are able to operate independently in a PEP. So for instance, if you were working with an advisor that you like and want to keep and move into this PEP, you're able to keep that advisor versus saying, hey, no, you have to work with this advisor because he's the only advisor to the PEP and all the various firms that are represented there. So that's what's neat about this. You can continue, that current relationship per se, if this was the person that was introduced to you to this particular platform. But otherwise, it's a way for all of us to work together in these types of plans. Okay, next. So let's look at some of the benefits versus the pros and the cons versus the PEP versus the state-run program, or CalSavers, as we call it here. Why this particular comparison? Well, again, we talked about the limitations on the contributions to just $6,000, and we talked about that. There's going to be a lot of responsibility, though maybe some filing requirements. They're still set up. They're still administrative. You're still running contributions if you don't if you don't delegate out to your payroll provider. So there's a little bit more administrative costs and requirements when you're offering the simples and the SEPs and things of that nature. So maybe you're saying, I don't know that I can designate a whole employee to that, or I don't really think I can take that full responsibility. Maybe I do want some assistance and the benefits of a 401k, but also mitigating the risk there that I would otherwise be taking on if I were to try to go it alone. So and moreover, maybe you want to do more than just the state-run plan. Maybe you really want to say, hey, I would like to contribute to my employees and their futures, and incentivize them perhaps to stay with me if they know I'm offering a match. So this might be another reason. So with that said, let's look at the pros and cons. If I'm gonna maybe just go beyond the state-run program, like I mentioned, you have plan design flexibility. Be able to have at least 2 to 3 options, or 3 options in the program that I participate in, which is good for those that maybe want to consider different ways to be a blessing, if you will, to your employees. Employer contributions would be allowed in this case. Likely it's lower cost to the employees, meaning the funds that are typically used, or the administrative fees that are being applied to their accounts for having the 401k, which all affects returns, by the way. Investment flexibility, you'll have a exhaustive investment menu, where that may be limited in the cases for the other types that we discussed. All employees can participate, as I mentioned. You have higher contribution limits, and the employee recruitment and retention tool. You could potentially be using this in your benefits package in terms of, hey, why would I want to work here versus there? Well, this might be a key driver as to why someone might want to choose your firm over another, or stay with your firm over another. Also, as I mentioned, there's participant education from an advisor, or that 321 fiduciary, as I mentioned to you, and you don't get those in the other types of plans. Your employee is going to have to figure out, if he goes on a state-run plan, get investment advice from wherever. You're not providing it. Same with the simple and the SEPs. So at least in this case, you're providing some education from the advisor. What is the con here? Well, it's going to likely cost you more to go this route. However, not the full cost of the 401k, and it's going to vary. But I've seen in some cases for my clients where have we gone the full route and they've taken the full responsibilities and bring all the players involved in needing to run a plan. I've seen at least a 40 to 50% savings by joining the PEP option. Let's go ahead and go next. So let's talk lastly, as we sort of move towards wrapping this up, about how this can enhance your current retirement plan. Basically, the two keywords are incentivize and retain, right? So think about it like this. So maybe you're ready. Maybe you've been on a simple or a SEP, and you want to graduate from that small plan and go up to the 401k. Maybe you're looking to receive the benefits that we discussed. So that might be one way to enhance the plan from a small plan to a 401k. Or more specifically, maybe you're on a plan now and your service level is not so great. Maybe there's some unhappiness there. Maybe the technology to deal with the third-party administrator, or that 316 and fiduciary I mentioned, maybe it's a little difficult, maybe it's a little dated. You want to move towards some cutting-edge technology, for instance, mobile phone access and easy setup of enrollment and et cetera. That might be another way to enhance the plan if you're feeling that maybe it's time to provide smoother access to your retirement plan. And then there's a potential cost savings. And what do I mean by that? Well, you could be thinking about, well, I'm fully, taking the brunt of a 401k offering now. Participation isn't what I expect it to be, yet I have this expense. Well, maybe looking at a PEP might be a way to, potentially save some monies here by sharing some of those responsibilities and costs with others. Or maybe just a straight one-to-one comparison, not just a PEP, but maybe a 401k to 401k comparison. Maybe it's time to do the cost analysis, and maybe you have an opportunity to save in that regard. Not to mention the cost savings to the employee. As I mentioned earlier, some of these costs can really affect returns when they're being taken from employee accounts, especially in those early years. So you want to be careful of that. So maybe just in general, it's time to do a cost comparison analysis of where you're at right now. Or if you're just getting started, well, you know what, let me explore my options. Maybe, I do want to go a little bit beyond the basic or the smaller retirement plan options. Maybe I can do the PEP, but I know I definitely don't want to take the full brunt of the 401k costs. So that might be another idea. And then lastly, a way to enhance your plan, especially for those that might have those of you that are faith-based employers, and you have faith-minded employees who want to align their values and their investments. This is a way, specifically working with my firm, as I mentioned, we specialize here in faith-based investing, impact investing, as we call it. Socially responsible investing in general, the larger umbrella term for this movement, is just continuing to grow. It is not going away anytime soon. And people more and more want to have their wealth aligned with their values and making particular impacts in their society. So this would be a way, as one of my vendors exclusively works in this area, and we can provide options, not just necessarily either or, but both. So for those people who want that option but don't have it where they currently work, this might be a way to enhance your plan by working with, for instance, my firm. But otherwise, know that they're out there. These are all ways that you could be thinking about enhancing your plan. So as we get closer to wrapping this up, because I know there's some Q&A time that we want to be able to afford you guys. So let me just kind of close with how we can be your guide here at Two Pillars. I'm going forward through that. That's the way I think you can look at us. We are really the navigators of the retirement landscape. And as we discuss here, we know the various types of plans that might make sense for you or not, but it really does start with a consultation of how we can potentially get you toward a compliance solution, which is our next slide. Because that's really the goal in all this. We need to get you compliant. If you're a business owner here in California and you're not offering a qualified plan, and how can we help you succeed? Well, there's, go ahead, next point. Guidance, as I mentioned, guidance towards a compliant retirement solution. Next point, enhancement, as we discussed. What are ways that we can incentivize those benefits and retention for your employees? An employee is more likely to stay in his position or join a new organization when there's those types of options, before them, saying, hey, you know what, this employer is offering me a way to save, and he's offering me a match, and that's something that's important to me, and I feel like he has my best interest at heart. And I think that would help you, especially in this labor environment that we're in. I think it's important to use all of the weapons you have to your disposal to keep employees where they're at and not have them go on to your employer, your competitor, sorry. And then finally, with financial planning, and this is key. We can just fill in that blank here. We're all born with at least one financial goal, and that's our retirement goals. And that applies both to the employee and the employer. And that's one way that we can help you succeed, by sitting here and sitting down, having a consultation, thinking about the retirement goals of the employer and the opportunity for the employee as well. So we do specialize also in values-based financial planning, a way to help get us towards our retirement goals. Something I think is key, important, especially if I could think, just spend a moment to incentivize the Latino community. We are a large community and growing, and if we don't start to think about savings, we're going to have a serious societal issue in the future as we go to retirement. If we are not saving, we could be looking at a serious impact to the public dole if we do not save better. And I know a lot of that is an educational situation that perhaps we can all think more about together at some other point. But otherwise, here at Two Pillars, we're sensitive to that and want to see change and equip the Latino community with opportunities like this to save. And at a minimum, so is the state. They've thought of this, and they're offering now the requirement so that all employees can have access to a better future. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. If you'd like to learn more, please schedule a call. Call us here at toll-free 833-377-0051 if you're not looking at the screen, or just jump right on our calendar over on our website, twopillarsam.org/connect with-us, if you will. That's one way to get in touch directly. And then, with that said, I also want to thank you guys here for your time and your attention as we come up here with just a bit left in our hour together. Strength and stability. If you've been wondering, what are the two pillars? What do they all mean? Well, strength and stability is the short, names for what we do here. Strength in our investing, stability in our long-term investment solutions, and of course, impact investing is at the heart of what we do. So thank you so much for your time and attention, and I'm looking forward to the questions you guys might have out there. So please contact us. We look forward to hearing from you and see how we might be able to help.
Thank you so much, Carlos. We do have some questions here for you. The first one that I want to point out is how quickly can a basic plan be established?
That's a great question. So, it's going to really depend on what the solution, which one is selected. Let's just say, for instance, the PEP. The PEP typically 60 days once the agreements are signed. The vendor I work with, as I mentioned, July Services, they're really a great group, really sharp, highly efficient, and timeline that we've been operating off of is 60, assuming everyone is doing their part with moving things along and getting the right people in the right places. But 60-day for a PEP. For a simple IRA, let's say, for instance, or a SEP IRA, that's going to really depend on the custodian that's going to be used in their process. I would put that closer to about 30 days. But otherwise, the state-run program, Cal Savers, they've got about the same runway as well from my discussions with them as well, because you do have some periods that you have to provide employees for opting out. But otherwise, 60 days seems to be, about the right time frame.
Thank you. Okay, one more question. What advice do you give both to employers and to employees when it comes to saving for retirement?
Yeah, great question. I say this, I say start now. There's no better time to start, even if it's just with the minimums that the state's going to require for the program. If you wait until your budget can afford it, the chances are high, as we've seen in the evidence, that you're not going to get started. So ideally, starting now and starting frequently is the best way to go about retirement savings. And, you know, ideally, we should be shooting for 25% of our income. And I know that's a tall order for some. But if we put aside at least a quarter of what we make for every dollar, that might help. Let me put this thought in your head. Social Security, which a lot of people just assume is going to be there, 1 and 2 is going to be enough to survive on. And, studies have shown that it only constitutes for about 32% or so of the retirement income. You've got to make up the difference somehow. If you don't have a pension and those are not really offered anymore, or win the lotto, you've got an issue on your hand. How are you going to come up with that other amount? 68% in retirement. So saving a quarter of every dollar frequently is, I think, a good place to start. On average, you'll see in most plans that people are, putting aside about 12%. So you're about halfway there. But I like to advise my clients, at least put a quarter away, and just do that systematically. Make it part of just a habit. You're constantly just doing that. It's part of your budget. You learn how to live without it, and just keep on doing it consistently. That's what I would say, just in general. But as far as employers, at this point, you're in the the penalty phase of the program. You really don't have any other choice now but to be compliant. You don't want to start facing fines. What I would say, as a matter of first steps, is give me a call, and we can start to consult and decide what some options are for you, including if you have no time or the ability to deal with getting compliant with the program. I can even assist in doing that. So I'd love to discuss that. But I would say, doing nothing would be a mistake. You gotta do something at this point. California's made sure of that. Does that help?
I think that was really good advice. I don't see any more questions. So I'm gonna pass it over back to Javier to close us out. If there's no more questions. I don't think so.
Okay. Well, it's been wonderful to spend this time with you. And again, look forward to hearing from anybody out there that needs assistance. And, have a great day. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Carlos. Wonderful presentation.
Thanks.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.